Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mundane Matt. And over the course of the past 2 years, during the entire lead in to the 2016 presidential election, shit happened that probably should not have happened. Trump is in office. That should not have happened. You may like him, and that's entirely up to you. That's perfectly fine. I'm looking at his couple days in office, and I'm just like, really? Okay. We'll wait to see what happens, but I think he's pushing a few things a little bit too hard. But anyway, over the course of the presidential campaign, we saw that the DNC 100% fucked over Bernie Sanders and pushed Hillary Clinton through, never once actually paying attention to what people thought about her and to what the general consensus was surrounding Hillary. And it led to her being pretty viciously defeated in the Electoral College. She may have won the popular vote, but until we change that archaic and fucking frankly outdated system, it has nothing to do with the price of tea in China. But some people now are trying to take this particular situation and turn it into a new movement in the Democratic Party, and that would be something called Justice Democrats. Now, Justice Democrats is a new movement being pushed through by YouTubers like Kyle Kulinski, and I believe the Young Turks. I can't really find anything on the website that's talking about who's behind this, just what they are. So it says here, Democrats that represent people, not corporations. Well, I mean, we want to see more things like that. And clear, they're asking for people to help us recruit candidates in a unified campaign to replace every establishment congressperson in 2018. Together, we can create a government that fights for all Americans. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the term congressperson, okay, because it feels like one singular body. It's not. There's senators and there's representatives, right? There's senators and there's representatives, and it's two different fucking things, but they do fall under that umbrella. And I feel that people tend to focus on the term Congress as more of a catch-all than explaining what the differences are. But let's just keep going down. It says here, we just witnessed two impossible things happen. One, Donald Trump as POTUS. Two, a little-known socialist from Vermont launched an issue-driven campaign and nearly defeated the most powerful political machine in America. And I think he would have actually succeeded had the DNC not colluded against him. To be honest with you, I really do feel Bernie would have had that just fucking like locked down. If you look at the margins of victory over Hillary Clinton in the primaries, it was always by a large margin. If you look at the times Hillary beat Bernie, the majority of the time it was within like a point. In some cases, like 0.2 points. It was just like such a minuscule number. And Bernie, I think, had the overall heart of the people, but the machine didn't want him being there. And as a result, Trump is president. It says here too, politically, all bets are off, but we do have a choice. We can go down with the ship in a blaze of fascist glory or correct our course as a nation. We have everything we need to build a thriving economy, give everyone a good education and healthcare, massively reduce our prison population, and become a world-renowned democracy again. The one key ingredient we are missing is a government that represents the people of this country, so let's change that. We are going to recruit hundreds of Justice Democrats to run the biggest campaign this country has ever seen, and we're going to replace every politician in Congress that puts the need of corporate donors above the people. And look, don't get me wrong, that is a very, very, very just movement. Not a huge fan of the title Justice Democrats. It just sounds like something Cenk Uygur came up with, right? He's just like, everyone, of course, Justice Democrats, of course. Just fuck, I fucking hate Cenk. Anyway, so it's definitely agenda driven, it's issue driven, not corporate driven. Good. We do need to make sure that there is a separation between corporations and government. I am very much on board with getting rid of lobbyists. I understand why, to some extent, they might be necessary, but they're also, I don't know, like, I think the Electoral College, they're kind of fucking outdated. But there's a lot of money at play, and the money is what causes the problems. Let's take a look here at their platform, because this is where I think we're going to get the most information here. So it says here, it's time to face the facts. The Democratic Party is broken and the corporate establishment wing of the party is responsible. Republicans now hold most state legislators, most governorships, the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the presidency. So in 2018, hundreds of Justice Democrats will run a unified campaign to replace every corporate-backed member of Congress and rebuild the party from scratch. That is our plan. You know, a couple of years ago, there was a thing called the American Jihad. It was actually put forward on Fox News, and I don't know if I did a video about it, but essentially what the guy was espousing was that we take citizens from the country that are politically minded, send them abroad to other countries, fund their citizenship, and then fund basically their political campaigns to put them in positions of power to therefore bring American democracy to the rest of the world. This, while not as globalist, feels very similar in nature, which is one of the reasons why I'm having a little bit of trouble with it. I understand what they're trying to do here. It just, like, you're not going to run a unified campaign. I just don't feel like you're going to, I don't think you're quite there yet. It's one of those things where it's like 2018, we're going to run this unified campaign to put hundreds of Justice Democrats in office. That's going to require an absolute fuckload of money. And unless you're suckling at George Soros's teat, it probably ain't going to fucking happen. Okay, but it does continue. Pass a constitutional amendment to put an end to Washington corruption and bring about election reform. Super PACs should be banned, private donations to politicians and campaigns should be banned, and clean public financing systems should be implemented to take over our government by corporations and billionaires. Americans deserve free and fair elections, free from corrupt big money donors. The Supreme Court has effectively legalized bribery. It's time for an Article 5 convention to take our democracy back from the brink of oligarchy. Prior to passing this amendment, all members of the Justice Party, oh God, I fucking hate that name, should reject billionaires and corporate donations when running for office to show the American people that we just don't talk the talk, we walk the walk. Ranked choice voting should also be implemented to make smaller parties a viable option. All provisions of the Voting Rights Act should be reinstated, and gerrymandering for partisan gain should be banned. And these are things I do agree with. I do agree with this for being just like how they want to handle their platform. Like I said, it's a good idea on paper. It is. It's a good idea on paper. But in practice, I'm not too sure how it would play out. Then it goes on to say they want to re-regulate Wall Street and hold white-collar criminals accountable. Despite engaging in systemic fraud and causing a subprime mortgage meltdown and the Great Recession, you can count on the people from Wall Street who are in prison for their crimes on one hand. It's time to prosecute the criminals, bring back Glass-Steagall, and re-regulate Wall Street to prevent another crash. Prison is not just for the poor and middle class anymore. We will have cops on Wall Street, not just Main Street. That, to me, feels like a bit of a tall order. Okay, if Obama couldn't get these fuckers in jail, I don't think you're going to be able to do it either. It's just a couple people went to jail. More people should have gone to jail. At this point, you should be more about trying to prevent it from happening rather than going back and trying to prosecute people for these crimes. Look, you may disagree with me on that, but you'll have a better chance of re-changing the system by focusing on re-regulating it for the future rather than trying to go back to 2008 and hold people accountable. The majority of the American public has moved on, even those affected by the crash, right? Those people will still have moved on, and they'd rather see things fixed rather than a retreading of a very painful part of their lives based on poor decision making. Goes on to say, end billionaire and corporate tax dodging, fix the system to benefit middle class and poor people. Corporations dodge $450 billion a year in taxes by using offshore tax havens. We should end this injustice as well as chain the capital gains tax to the income tax, increase the estate tax, and implement the Buffett rule so that no millionaire CEO pays less in taxes than his or her secretary. It's time for a tax system that benefits the middle class and the poor and makes the top 1% and multinational corporations pay their fair share. Now, in Kyle's original video, this part, if I remember it correctly, he was talking a lot about like how they want to make it so millionaires who make millions of dollars still make millions of dollars, but don't make as many millions of dollars. Like that's what he was basically saying. And I'm just like, that was one of the moments where I just kind of stopped watching for a few because I'm like, oh God, you idiot. You cannot sit there and tell people You cannot, not in our society, tell people that you want their support to stop millionaires from making more money. A lot of times people vote Republican, they vote conservative because it's the party of people trying to be like, if you vote like us, one day you will have what we have. And if you're telling people to vote your way so then millionaires are going to not make money, then those millionaires will then fund counter programs in order to basically try to sway the public through other means. And they'll have a lot more money and a lot more influence to do it. I'm all for trying to make it so CEOs pay their fair share in taxes. That's one of the reasons why I support a flat tax. I think a flat tax works, clearly based on brackets. Okay, that's not really a flat tax, but it's a tough thing. I'd like to see a flat tax, but at the same time, I know my tax bracket. I know what I make, what I had to pay out this year. Fucking hell, because Oregon has a high income tax rate, so it's like if you could, make that a little better on me in the back end, that'd be great. But this is not about making it for people like me to get better taxes, right? Because of where I sit on this. So again, I don't think that's really going to work. It says defend free speech and expression. Okay, let's see what they say here. We support the right to express unpopular opinions without fear of censorship. We support free speech on college campuses. The marketplace of ideas should be embraced. A vibrant debate is healthy for democracy, and we should cherish the First Amendment. We also support net neutrality and a free open internet. I agree on all those points right there. Oppose bigotry. Ooh, this ought to be good. We must speak out against racism, sexism, xenophobia, and all forms of bigotry. Non-discrimination protections that currently apply to race, religion, and gender should be expanded to include the LGBTQ community and the atheist community. Hey, you know what? They're talking about the atheists. Atheists don't get no love in America. They really don't. Making all Americans equal is not asking for special privileges, it's asking for the rule of law. Justice and equality for all as outlined by the United States Constitution. Okay. All forms of bigotry. I just want you guys to keep that one in mind for a second. Okay, then it says here, make the minimum wage a living wage and tie it to inflation. This is about justice and basic human decency. If you work hard and you work full time, you shouldn't live in poverty. I do agree with that. However, we live in a capitalist country. I don't need to say anything more about that. We live in a capitalist country. You are not going to change that. All right, by telling the rich that they're not going to be rich anymore and they have to give it more to the other people. It's like, that's not how you do it. You can't, the fight for 15 is going to crash the fucking fast food industry because people are going to automate things. And we know that automated jobs will do the jobs of 20 people here in the next 10 years. So asking for a living wage and tying it to inflation might have a negative impact on a number of industries because they'll just go full automated. And that is a very hard discussion to have because there is, I don't think, a right way to go about it. If we could all find a good middle ground, then there's that. But what they should do is they should work towards bringing more jobs back to the States. So then people, if they're producing more, then there's more jobs and then there's more money. And then that's how everyone goes. It's like a rising tide raises all boats sort of thing. And I think that would be better than trying to force this living wage on people because it's just not going to happen. People live in different areas. The living wage is, if you're tying it to a federal program, then it's going to be flat across the board. State to state's a different thing. California's living wage is far different than Oregon or Washington. Not much different, I guess, anymore. But it used to be. When I moved from Oregon to San Diego back in 1999, the cost of living was 4 times more expensive in San Diego in 1999 than it was in Portland. Now it's different. But what's more expensive here might be less expensive in Topeka, Kansas or something. So again, it's these are just, unless they find ways to fully expand upon this, these are just talking points. All right, so they also want to ensure universal health care as a right. The United States should catch up to every modern nation and implement a single-payer Medicare system for all. There's no reason we can't be number 1 in the world instead of 37. It's time to end the destruction of the American healthcare by rapacious price gouging for-profit private health insurance middlemen. And look, as a person who really does not like the individual mandate on Obamacare, again, we're in a capitalist society. People will become doctors because they want to help people and because they have to also pay back the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they spend in fucking student loans, and they also want to make a lot of fucking money. So again, it's healthcare should be something that's provided, at least in a very competitive way. that lowers the price. Obamacare didn't do that, but also making a single payer system, I don't know if that's going to work as well as they want it to. People oftentimes cite Canada. Well, Canada can do it. Then they look at the size of Canada versus the size of America, and it's comparable, right? It's comparable, but there's like 35 million Canadians. There's 37 million people in the state of California that are legally accounted for. The population is like almost 10 times higher in the United States than Canada. And there's like, it's just not going to work the way that they want it to. There has to be competition in the marketplace, and that is not going to come from what I think is a single payer system. Then they say, ensure universal education as a right. Educating the citizenry of a nation pays dividends in the long run, with the economy getting back much more than initially put in. Crushing student loan debt for higher education would no longer burden young men and women trying to improve their lives through hard work. We should strive to have the best education system in the world. Look, I like Bernie's approach, free tuition, but charge them on the books and shit. I like that. But the downside to it is again, for-profit schools. It's just where we are. It requires a whole big shift from how we view things, which is one of the reasons why this Justice Democrats thing so far is not really working for me, because a lot of it feels like they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. All right, so it says, end unnecessary wars and nation building. The United States maintains 800 military bases worldwide at a cost of $100 billion a year. This is money that can be spent at home, creating jobs, rebuilding infrastructure, and investing in the future of the people. The disastrous war in Iraq cost trillions. The war in Afghanistan is 15 years in with no end in sight, and we're currently bombing 7 different countries. We spend more on our military than the next 8 countries combined. Despite countless lives lost and destroyed, terrorism has only gotten worse. It's time to end the wars and perverse monetary incentive structure that makes politicians flippant about sending young men and women to die. Unilateral U.S. military force should only be used as a last resort to defend the nation. The current budget would be cut drastically if we use our Department for Defense for what it was intended for, defending us, instead of waging interventionist wars. See, but the thing with that, though, is that and I agree with that, but also we protect our allies. That's part of like the whole, situation. Like, look at like NATO forces, is similar things with that. We protect our fucking allies. And it's a hard one. It's going to be a hard one because we live in a world where people view the military as being kind of like Team America World Police. And if there's a problem, we go in and help out. I'm very much of the belief that like America first is a proper mindset. And that's one of the things I like about Trump, because I feel we do need to spend more time at home, which is why a lot of the shit that they've said here is stuff that I have heard come from the Trump camp and from a lot of people. So it's not just, the Democrat side of things that are talking about these issues. A lot of people feel that way, and hopefully, if Justice Democrats takes off, they'll have a shot. Okay, talks about here the end the war, the failed war on drugs. The goal is legalization, taxation, and regulation. Prohibition only makes drug cartels more powerful, increases crime, and makes drugs more dangerous due to lack of enforced safety standards. Okay, yeah, and then also, I'm just going to kind of skip through some of these more because it's like this is a long video as it is. Additionally, though, serving time for nonviolent drug offenses should be pardoned. I agree with all that. It does. Look, in liberal states, pot is a big thing. Surprisingly, in like red eastern states, it's like opiates and that kind of shit. And yeah, fucking legalize pot, regulate that shit, tax that shit, and see how much money you fucking make. And also, yeah, people are in jail for nonviolent drug offenses. Let them the fuck out. Because all they're doing at that point is literally suckling on the teat of the government. We should invest more into rehab centers and getting people actual fucking help. All right. Create the New Deal. Our infrastructure gets a grade D from the Society of Civil Engineers. The government should invest billions in rebuilding crumbling roads, bridges, schools, levees, airports, etc. There's no reason why we can't have the world's #1 infrastructure. I do agree with that. Create the renewable energy revolution. Okay, so that's all about climate change and everything else. And I agree, we need more. I'm a big proponent of renewable energy, solar, hydro, and wind. I'd like to see more from that. I know that there were some problems with the Obama administration, and I think they spent like $90 million on that kind of thing, and it didn't do as well. All right, so block the TPP already happened, so skipping past that one. End constitutional overreaches, ban the NSA from bulk data collection and warrantless spying, shut down Gitmo and all extrajudicial prisons, prosecute torturers and those who violated the Geneva Conventions, Nuremberg Tribunal, international law, and U.S. law, return habeas corpus and due process, pardon whistleblowers like Edward Snowden. We wouldn't be leading from behind on human rights. We must be the home of liberty. We should practice values that we preach. Completely agree across the board on that one. Especially habeas corpus. Most people don't realize that, but George Bush signed that shit away in 2006. Obama promised to get rid of it, never touched it. Gitmo, Obama kind of rolled over on his back over that one. And and whistleblowers, he prosecuted quite a few of them. So Obama wasn't really for the people on that one. Okay, banning arming human rights violators. We recently gave Saudi Arabia billions in weapons. Yep. Again, I'm just going to agree with that one. Enact common sense gun regulation. 92% of Americans want expanded background checks. 54% want a ban on assault rifles. And 54% want a ban on high capacity magazines. I don't think those numbers are accurate. I don't. I feel we should invest more instead of like common sense gun regulation, invest more in gun education. I feel that would actually have a higher impact on the overall lowering of shootings versus trying to make them taboo. Because earlier when it talked about the whole ending the war on drugs, end the war on guns, and you're going to see a very similar response, right? Through education and not trying to make it this taboo thing. I think that more people would just be like, oh, it's a gun, whatever, and just be fine with it, right? Because Americans like their guns and they ain't going to give them up, period. So I don't think that particular statistic is accurate. Ensure paid vacation time, sick leave, maternity leave, childcare. Yeah, I think more businesses should definitely do that. I know places like for example, how about this one? Michigan, for example, just Michigan does not require employers to give employees breaks. Not even making that up. Literally right now, that's happening right now. You work at any place in Michigan, you don't have to be given a lunch break. You don't have to be given 10 to 15 minute break every 2 hours. You can work a full 8-hour shift and they're perfectly legal to force you to do that. That shit that should be fucking looked into. So I do agree with this. Abolish the death penalty. Yeah, no, I agree. The reason why abolishing the death penalty, in my opinion, is because it's not so much because humans are fallible and we never get it right 100% of the time. It's a financial thing. All right, it will cost the average taxpayers on average $12 million for someone to go on death row. Which you think about, like, why does it cost that much money? Appeals. It's pretty much appeals, right? Public defenders come in there, they try to appeal it. You get a bunch of other shit that goes on, court proceedings when they do the appeals, so on and so forth. It's like $12 million. Whereas the average cost for an inmate on life in prison is, I think, $40,000. So you can kind of see where there's an off-put there, right? Like, it's way cheaper to have somebody on life in prison than it is to have them on death row locked away in a whole 23 hours a day. So yeah, get rid of it. From purely a financial level, not even a social one, just a financial one, drop the death penalty. Defend and protect women's rights. We support the Paycheck Fairness Act. We oppose Republican cuts to Planned Parenthood and women's health clinics across the country. In 2016 alone, 60 trap laws targeting abortion were passed in 19 states. We will vigorously oppose all efforts to dismantle reproductive rights. I'm on board with that one too. Enact police reform. Oh, here we go. We all believe in the core idea of policing to serve and protect the community. Police are a vital part of the American society, and that is why it's so important to reform the system to make it serve all Americans. For-profit policing should be abolished. Police training should be retooled to emphasize de-escalation tactics, and body cameras should be mandatory on all officers. Furthermore, the community oversight board should be created and broken windows policy should be eliminated. Stop and frisk, which disproportionately targets blacks and Latinos 87% of the time, has a 97% failure rate. On top of being discriminatory and ineffective, it's also unconstitutional and should be ended. Special prosecutors must also be appointed to hold police accountable. And the thing with that too is, look, the cops, I think the cops feel like they're under fire, and that adds a lot of it to it. And it's the way that the media portrays it, a way that a lot of people attack the cops for doing their job. A lot of the, my boy didn't do anything when they clearly did. And that kind of confusion and anger comes out. And it's a very tough thing to happen. But I mean, ultimately I'm on board with teaching more de-escalation tactics, because there was recently an officer who attempted to de-escalate a situation with the suspect with the gun. And then he was fired for not shooting the suspect. We live in a very weird world when it comes to the police. So yeah, I agree with half of those things. So looking at this entire platform, I understand what the Justice Democrats are trying to accomplish, and I think they're on the right path. But I don't know if they've thought everything through, because using like the Young Turks, if they're going to be like the primary platform for this, because they have a reach of over 3 million people, they're not the people to push this sort of thing. They are failing in a number of areas in terms of respectability, of information, and reach. They are becoming a laughingstock of the news community on YouTube because of the antics of Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur, and the fact that like all the shit they did during the election, when Anna's out there going like, I'm better than you because you voted Trump, that is not going to bring people together. That is going to further push identity politics, further divide people as they're trying to navigate through whatever fucking situation we're in right now. And that is not going to end well for anyone. I understand the concept behind Justice Democrats, but at the same time, I cannot fully support it at this point in time. I like a lot of what they have to say. But for one, I don't know who's behind it, because I don't see anything here that's talking about who's behind it at all. There's no names attached to it. I just know Kyle Kulinski from YouTube. And I know they're trying to basically perform their own version of an American jihad, which I think might have an impact if they're able to get the right funding. And like, George Soros and shit. But in essence, this particular thing almost feels like it is the American, it's like the Tea Party, but for the left. They're trying to get their own people in. The Tea Party were effective at doing that in 2010. They were very effective. They got a bunch of their people in who failed to do anything of value at all. But who's to say that the Justice Democrats are going to be any bit more successful? And what I would rather see them do, if they're going to try to get in people to Congress, would be to find those people that are that have law degrees, that are community activists or community organizers, that would be able to have an understanding of this. Because my fear is that they're going to get so desperate to make this thing a reality that they're going to, like, they're just going to pick whoever the fuck comes along. Like, hey, you, Jeff, you look like you could be a person for Congress. Do you want to proceed? He's like, oh, yeah, damn, man, I want to be congressman, yeah, and it's like not qualified at all for the job. Because you can nominate people on here too, and they might do a vetting process if the money is there and they can afford it. But my fear is that they're going to become so involved in their own political scheme that they're going to cut corners in that particular area in hopes of just trying to force their candidate through. And I understand wanting to use YouTube and the internet and social media as a way to kind of push these ideals through, to kind of push this thing through. But I don't necessarily know if they're the ones to do it. I very much like Bernie Sanders. I very much think that Bernie Sanders is going to be the front runner for president in the DNC in 2020. If not him, then Elizabeth Warren. And I feel like they're going to need to get that kind of support from them. I know this organization is teamed up with some people that were involved, the Bernie-crats or whatever you want to call them, during the election. But again, I don't know who they are. I don't know their names. I don't know their qualifications. I just know they were involved somehow. And again, the lack of information being forthcoming on the website is definitely worrying to me. So here's the deal. You want to support Justice Democrats, by all means, go for it, right? Run your names through, nominate who you can nominate, but ask them to be held accountable for the information. Ask them to put a list forward of who is behind the scenes, who is running the operation, who is getting the money. Are they a 501c3? Are they for profit? These are things I'm not seeing, right? These are things I'm not seeing. So it's like, I'm looking at here right now. It says like just paid for by Justice Democrats, justicedemocrats.com, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. So who the fuck is they? And where the fuck is the money going? And I think that's a question that should be asked of anyone who wants to support a movement like this.